The luxurious halls of Nexus Point Space Station hummed with tension. Ornate decorations and advanced technology surrounded the diplomatic chamber, reflecting the power and prestige of the Cthar hegemony. Ambassador Lorien of the Xylosian species sat draped in ceremonial robes embedded with precious metals and bioluminescent stones that shifted in patterns indicating his elevated status among the Galactic Council. His scaled skin glistened under the artificial light as he stared down at the human delegation with barely concealed disdain. Across the polished obsidian table sat Ambassador Alara Vance, her posture straight and dignified despite the significantly less ornate attire of the Earth delegation. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and her blue diplomatic uniform bore only the United Earth emblem, a stark contrast to the ostentatious displays of her counterparts. Yet there was steel in her gaze that even the arrogant Lorien could not help but notice. The hegemony's position remains unchanged, Lorien announced, his translator converting his sibilant native tongue into the common galactic standard. Your species' rapid expansion poses an unacceptable destabilization to the established order. The restrictions proposed are generous considering your primitive status in the galactic community. Alara took a measured breath before responding. With all due respect, Ambassador, the restrictions you propose would cripple our legitimate trade routes and force us to abandon colonies that have been established for over 50 years. Earth cannot and will not accept these terms. The tension in the room thickened as several other members of the Galactic Council shifted uncomfortably. The smaller skirmishes along the border regions between human and Cthar territories had been escalating for months. This meeting was supposed to defuse the situation, not exacerbate it. Perhaps you misunderstand your position, Ambassador Vance, Lorien replied, the gem-like eyes on his elongated face narrowing. This is not a negotiation between equals. This is the hegemony granting you an opportunity to avoid unpleasantness. Alara's diplomatic pad blinked with an incoming message, a secure communication from Earth Command. She glanced down briefly, noting it was from Admiral Marcus Thorne himself. The message was simple: stand firm. We are prepared for all contingencies. A cold certainty settled in her stomach. They had been preparing for this possibility for years, hoping it would never come to pass. Perhaps it is you who misunderstands, Ambassador Lorien, she said calmly. Humanity does not seek conflict, but we will not surrender our sovereignty or the safety of our colonies. Lorien's skin flushed with a purple hue, a sign of irritation among his kind. Then allow me to be perfectly clear about the hegemony's final position. What followed was not diplomacy, but dictation. The Cthar hegemony's ultimatum demanded Earth dismantle half its defense fleet, withdraw from 3 major sectors of space that contain some of humanity's most resource-rich colonies, and accept Cthar oversight of all human technological development, essentially reducing Earth to a vassal state. When Lorien finished, he leaned back, a smug expression on his face. Supreme Overlord Forlag has personally approved these terms. You have 48 standard cycles to begin compliance, or the hegemony will take measures to ensure it. Alara stood slowly, gathering her diplomatic materials with deliberate movements. I am authorized to respond immediately, Ambassador. Earth categorically rejects these terms. We came here in good faith to find a peaceful resolution. You have offered subjugation instead. Your primitive warships would not last a day against the might of the Cthar fleet, sneered one of Lorien's aides, a battle-scarred Cthar military attaché. Your weapons technology is centuries behind ours. Alara simply inclined her head. Then perhaps we should pray it doesn't come to that. She turned and led her delegation out of the chamber, maintaining composure until they reached the secure Earth diplomatic vessel. Once aboard, and after thorough security sweeps confirmed no surveillance, she opened a direct quantum-encrypted channel to Earth Defense Command. Admiral Marcus Thorne's weathered face appeared on screen. His graying hair and the deep lines around his eyes spoke of decades of military service, but his gaze remained sharp and alert. They've made their choice, Marcus, Alara said softly. The Cthar aren't interested in peace. The ultimatum was exactly as intelligence predicted: completely unacceptable. The Admiral nodded gravely. I've reviewed the transcript as it came in. The Security Council has already been briefed. They've authorized Chimera Protocol. Alara felt a chill run down her spine. Are we certain? Once initiated, there's no going back. Marcus completed her sentence. I know, but we've run every simulation, explored every diplomatic option. The Cathar understand only power, and they believe we don't have any. We've maintained this facade for decades precisely for this scenario. How long? She asked. We've already begun. My brother is activating the Shadow Tech Network as we speak. Miles away from this conversation, deep within the secure confines of Earth's most classified research facility buried beneath the Olympus Mons colony on Mars, Dr. Eris Thorne stood before a circular holographic display. Unlike his brother Marcus, Eris possessed a lean, almost frail physique, with perpetually disheveled hair and intense eyes that rarely made direct contact with others. But what he lacked in military bearing, he made up for with an intellect that had revolutionized physics and engineering, mostly in ways the greater galaxy remained blissfully unaware of. Initiate Phase 1 of Chimera Protocol. He instructed the assembled team of scientists and engineers. Activate all dormant sentinels in sectors 4 through 17. Status update on Quantum Entanglement Network? He asked a nearby technician. 100% operational, Dr. Thorne. All Shadow Tech deployments are ready for activation. Eris nodded, a strange mix of pride and dread washing over him. For 20 years, humanity had presented a carefully crafted image to the galaxy. One of a technologically competent, but ultimately unexceptional species with conventional weapons and drives. All while in secret, networks of research facilities throughout human space have been pushing the boundaries of science into realms that would terrify their galactic neighbors. Not weapons of mass destruction. Those were crude and ultimately self-defeating. What humanity had developed was far more sophisticated. Quantum phase technology that could selectively disrupt matter at the subatomic level, rendering ships powerless without firing a shot. Gravity manipulation fields that could bend space itself around targets. And perhaps most disturbing of all, autonomous drone swarms of microscopic machines that could disassemble and transport matter across vast distances in the blink of an eye. We're receiving confirmation that Admiral Krell's fleet has entered the Epsilon Eridani system, announced the tactical officer. They appear to be advancing toward the mining colony. Right on schedule, Eris murmured. Let's give them their first glimpse of what they've awakened. In the depths of space, the formidable Cathar battle fleet commanded by Vice Admiral Krell approached the human outpost with absolute confidence. Krell himself stood on the command deck of his dreadnought, the relentless claw, his scaled hide bearing the ceremonial scars of a dozen successful campaigns. At his command were 30 warships. Overkill for a simple human outpost, but the Supreme Overlord had been clear. Make an example of them. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, reported his second-in-command. The primitive human vessels are attempting to evacuate civilians, but they will not succeed. Krell's mouth parts twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. Begin targeting their defensive installations. Have a merciless Fong and Void Hunter target their fleeing transports. Let none escape to spread word of their. Admiral, interrupted the sensor officer, his voice rising with confusion. I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations across multiple vessels. Krell turned sharply. Explain. Systems are failing across the fleet. Weapons going offline, shields collapsing. There's no apparent cause. No human ships are firing upon us. Throughout the Cathar fleet, chaos erupted as vessel after vessel reported critical system failures. Navigation controls locked, power cores dimmed, and weapon systems shut down as if unplugged by invisible hands. Krell watched in disbelief as his mighty armada drifted helplessly in space, their fearsome weapons rendered useless against an attack they couldn't even see or understand. Launch scout vessels, he commanded. Find whatever is causing this. 5 smaller craft deployed from the still-functioning hangar bays of the dreadnought, darting into the darkness of space to investigate. On the command view screen, Krell watched as the scouts dispersed in different directions, and then, one by one, they simply vanished from the sensor grid. Not destroyed in fiery explosions, not disabled like the larger vessels. They simply ceased to exist, as if erased from reality itself. "What is happening?" Krell demanded, his voice now tinged with the first notes of fear he had felt in decades of military service. "Where are our scouts?" There was no answer forthcoming from his equally bewildered crew. Only silence, and the horrifying realization that they faced something entirely beyond their comprehension. The news of this inexplicable defeat reached Supreme Overlord Forlag slowly and in fragments, as the surviving vessels of Krell's fleet limped back to Cthar space with tales too outlandish to be believed. Forlag, a massive specimen of the Cthar species with battle-scarred scales and cybernetic enhancements from countless campaigns, dismissed these reports initially as the excuses of incompetent commanders. Vessels disappearing without trace, systems failing without cause. He growled from his throne in the towering spire of the Imperial Palace on Xylos Prime. Krell has always been prone to exaggeration. The humans must have developed some crude form of electromagnetic interference, nothing more. Ambassador Lorien, standing before his supreme overlord, shifted uncomfortably. "The reports are consistent across all returning vessels, Your Eminence, and we're receiving similar accounts from patrol units in sectors adjoining human space. Ships simply vanish. Others find their systems completely neutralized. Impossible." Forlag slammed his clawed fist against the arm of his throne. "Our technology is the pinnacle of galactic achievement, refined over millennia. These humans have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. Perhaps they've been concealing their true capabilities," Lorien suggested hesitantly. Before Forlag could respond, a communication officer rushed into the throne room. A severe breach of protocol that spoke to the urgency of the message. "Your Eminence, we've received a transmission from Earth. It's being simultaneously broadcast to all members of the Galactic Council." The message that appeared on the grand view screen was brief and all the more chilling for its simplicity. "The patience of humanity has reached its end. Any hostile action against human territories or interests will meet with proportionate and unpredictable response. Withdraw or face the invisible." It was signed simply, United Earth Defense Force. "A bluff," Forlag declared, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "They seek to leverage these anomalies into a psychological advantage." Yet even as he spoke, reports continued to flood in from across Cthar space. More patrol vessels gone without explanation. Monitoring stations at the edge of human territory suddenly offline. No destruction, no debris, no distress calls. Just silence and absence where Cthar military might once existed. Among the Galactic Council, the reaction was mixed but increasingly alarmed. Species that had long stood with the Cthar hegemony began to quietly distance themselves from the conflict. Others, who had suffered under Cthar dominance, watched with barely concealed satisfaction as the bullies of the galaxy faced an unexpected challenge. "We must not show weakness," Lorien insisted to the Council. "These are mere tricks, meant to disguise the humans' fundamental vulnerability. Their colonies remain exposed. Their true fleet is small and conventional." But with each passing day, more Council members questioned the wisdom of antagonizing humanity. What if there was more to this seemingly unremarkable species than centuries of assessment had recognized? Back on Mars, Dr. Eris Thorne walked his brother through a secure laboratory where engineers worked on what appeared to be translucent crystalline structures no larger than a human thumb. "We call them crystal tears," Eris explained, his voice animated in a way it only became when discussing his work. "Each contains millions of quantum-entangled particles that can affect matter at the subatomic level. They don't destroy ships, Marcus. They selectively disassemble key components and instantly transport them elsewhere." Admiral Thorne picked up one of the devices, turning it in his hand. The light caught its facets, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the laboratory walls. "And where exactly is elsewhere?" Eris gave a rare smile. That's the beautiful part. We've established containment fields in uninhabited star systems light years from any civilization. We can hold the displaced components indefinitely or reintegrate them if necessary. And the vanished scout ships? Complete molecular disassembly and transport. The crews are unharmed, just relocated to one of our containment facilities. They don't even experience the passage of time during transition. Marcus set the crystal down carefully. You understand why this terrifies me as much as it will terrify them, don't you? Eris's smile faded. Of course. The power to unmake matter at will. It's godlike. That's why we've built in the ethical constraints. The technology requires multiple human authorizations to deploy. It can't be used against civilian targets, and it's designed to preserve life whenever possible. Small comfort to the Cthar, I imagine, Marcus observed. Better than the alternative. They intended to obliterate our colonies, Marcus. We're neutralizing their ability to harm us while minimizing casualties. Meanwhile, aboard one of the most advanced stealth vessels ever created, by human hands, Commander Lyra Nova guided her ship through the edges of Cthar territory. Her craft, the Phantom Echo, existed in a state of partial phase shift, making it effectively invisible to conventional sensors. Even its energy signature was disguised by technology that redirected emissions into subspace. A former fighter pilot with an impeccable record, Lyra had been selected personally by Admiral Thorne for this high-risk intelligence-gathering mission. Her task: observe and document the Cthar response to humanity's first demonstrations of shadow tech. Approaching Xylo's prime defense perimeter, she informed her small crew of specialists. Quantum camouflage at maximum efficiency. The view screens showed a massive buildup of Cthar warships around their homeworld, far more than intelligence had estimated. Clearly, Supreme Overlord Forlag was taking the human threat seriously now, despite his public posturing. They're implementing new scanning protocols, noted her sensor officer, attempting to detect phase-shifted matter. They're adapting faster than expected. Lyra nodded, impressed despite herself. Record everything. Dr. Thorne will want to see how quickly they're responding. The intelligence gathered by Lyra's mission would prove crucial in the days to come, as the Cthar hegemony, infuriated by its inability to locate and engage human forces directly, prepared for a massive offensive that would, they believed, overwhelm whatever mysterious technology humanity possessed through sheer numbers and firepower. The plan, conceived by Forlag himself in a rage-fueled strategic session, was simple. Gather the largest battle fleet in Cthar history, over 200 capital ships and nearly 1,000 support vessels, and launch a direct assault on Earth's solar system. Such overwhelming force would surely overcome whatever tricks the humans had deployed against smaller fleets. Even if they can make ships disappear, Forlag declared to his war council, they cannot possibly have the capacity to affect a fleet of this magnitude simultaneously. We will crush them with the weight of our glorious empire. The massive armada assembled at the edge of Cthar space, a display of military might intended to terrify not just humanity, but any species considering allegiance with them. Forlag himself took command from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, the largest and most heavily armed vessel in the Cthar fleet. On Earth, in the fortified chambers of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Marcus Thorne received the intelligence from Commander Nova's mission with grim determination. They're coming with everything they have, he informed the gathered military and political leadership. This will be the decisive engagement. President Kaido Lin, the elected leader of United Earth, looked around the table gravely. Is Chimera Protocol fully operational? Can we withstand an assault of this magnitude? We can do more than withstand it, Marcus replied. But I need unanimous authorization for full deployment of shadow tech assets. There was a heavy silence around the table. Everyone present understood the gravity of what was being proposed. They had witnessed the smaller demonstrations of humanity's hidden capabilities, but what was now being contemplated would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. The alternative is the potential destruction of Earth and our colonies, Ambassador Vance reminded them, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The Kthar have made their intentions clear. They will accept nothing less than our complete subjugation or elimination. President Lin nodded slowly. Put it to a vote. The authorization was granted unanimously. Within hours, the most sophisticated defensive network ever created by human hands was fully activated throughout Earth's sphere of influence and beyond. Stealth platforms that had lain dormant for years came online. Quantum communication channels opened between thousands of shadow tech nodes hidden throughout multiple star systems. As the Kthar battle fleet entered the outskirts of human space, they encountered no resistance. No human warships rose to meet them. Long-range scans showed normal activity at human colonies and outposts, as if they were unaware of or unconcerned by the approaching armada. They mock us with their indifference, Forlag hissed from his command throne. Perhaps they believe we will hesitate. Show them the folly of such belief. Begin targeting outer system installations. The order rippled through the massive fleet as weapon systems powered up and targeting computers locked onto human outposts. But just as the first salvos were about to launch, something extraordinary happened. Across the vast expanse of space occupied by the Kthar fleet, thousands of tiny points of light winked into existence. Crystal tiers deployed by stealth platforms and autonomous. Micro-drones. They emitted no detectable energy, but began to work their impossible magic at the quantum level. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms blared as systems throughout the flagship began failing in cascades. Weapons offline. Shields collapsing. Engine core shutting down. Communications failing. The reports came from not just the flagship, but from hundreds of vessels simultaneously. Forlag watched in mounting horror as his mighty armada was systematically crippled without a single shot being fired. Ships that moments ago had been the pride of the Kthar military now drifted powerless or, more terrifyingly, vanished from sensors altogether. The quantum displays around Forlag's command throne flickered and died, only to be replaced by a direct communication feed, a human face. Admiral Marcus Thorne looked directly into the eyes of his enemy. Zuplama Ofalot Forlag. This is not war, as you understand it. This is a statement. Your existence now depends on your next decision. Forlag, for the first time in his long and bloody career, felt true fear grip his hearts. Around him, his mighty flagship, a vessel that had survived battles with civilizations throughout the galaxy, was being unmade system by system. The deck beneath his clawed feet vibrated as critical components throughout the massive ship simply ceased to exist. "What are you?" he demanded, his voice stripped of its usual imperious tone. "We are what you forced us to become," Marcus replied evenly. "For decades, you and species like yours have seen humanity as primitive, as an annoyance to be controlled or eliminated. You judged our technology by what we allowed you to see, our capabilities by what we chose to reveal." As he spoke, holographic displays activated around Forlag, showing footage of human facilities that had been hidden from galactic detection. Vast shipyards building vessels unlike any the Kthar had encountered, research stations developing technologies that seemed to break the very laws of physics as the Kthar understood them. "While you boasted of your superiority, we prepared," Marcus continued. "Not for conquest, not for dominance, but for survival in a galaxy that continually threatened our existence. Every time you imposed restrictions on our trade, every time you annexed a system at our borders, every time you dismissed our diplomatic overtures, we adapted. We evolved." Another alarm sounded as the life support systems on the Eternal Dominion began to falter. Forlag's officers looked to him in panic, but he had no orders to give, no strategy against an enemy that could reach inside his ships and selectively erase their components. "Your fleet is neutralized," Marcus informed him matter-of-factly. "3/4 of your vessels are completely disabled. 1/8 have had critical components temporarily removed and transported elsewhere. The remainder have been relocated intact to containment facilities where their crews are unharmed but contained." "Impossible," Forlag whispered, but the evidence surrounded him. His mighty armada, the largest military force ever assembled in Cthar history, had been defeated without battle. You have two choices, Marcus concluded. Surrender unconditionally and work with us to establish a new, equitable relationship between our species and all others in the galaxy, or you let the alternative hang unspoken in the air between them. He didn't need to elaborate. The demonstration had made the consequences abundantly clear. Throughout the Cthar hegemony and across the Galactic Council, the news of the catastrophic defeat spread like wildfire. The unthinkable had happened. The mighty Cthar, who had dominated galactic politics for millennia, had been brought to their knees by a species they had dismissed as barely worth notice. More shocking than the defeat itself was the manner of it. The humans had not destroyed the Cthar fleet in the traditional sense. There were no great explosions, no fields of debris, no massive casualties to justify retribution. The ships and their crews had simply been rendered harmless, their capacity for violence surgically removed with a precision that terrified military strategists across 1,000 worlds. "What kind of species develops such technology?" asked one council member to Ambassador Lorien, who now found himself ostracized by former allies. "Not planet killers or nova bombs. Those we understand. But this? The ability to reach inside our most advanced vessels and simply unmake them, to transport matter across vast distances instantly, selectively, precisely. This is not the technology of warriors, but of gods." The surrender, when it came, was total. Supreme Overlord Forlag, once the most powerful military leader in the galaxy, signed the document in the presence of Ambassador Illyra Vance. His once proud posture was diminished, his scales dull with the shame of defeat. "The terms are more generous than you deserve," Illyra told him. "Frankly, Earth does not seek territory, reparations, or subjugation. We want only what we have always wanted: the right to exist peacefully, to trade freely, to develop without interference." The new Galactic Charter established principles that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Equal representation for all spacefaring species regardless of technological development or military power, prohibition of aggression against emerging civilizations, open sharing of basic technologies for healthcare, environmental management, and sustainable energy, and a new council structure that prevented any single alliance from dominating galactic politics. Most significantly, the Charter included provisions for mutual defense against genuine threats to galactic stability, a cooperation that would be led jointly by multiple species, including humans. The Cthar hegemony was dissolved, its component species granted independence and self-governance. Military restrictions were imposed on those who had participated most actively in aggression against others. But perhaps the greatest punishment was the psychological impact, the knowledge that they had been utterly defeated by a power they could scarcely comprehend. In the aftermath, Dr. Eris Thorne recommended sharing certain defensive technologies with peaceful species as a gesture of goodwill and a step toward greater cooperation. Not the shadow tech, he clarified during a Security Council meeting. That remains sealed and protected. But some of our advances in shield technology, sustainable power generation, and medical science could benefit many worlds. The proposal was approved, cementing humanity's new role not as conquerors, but as partners in a more equitable galactic order. 6 months after the surrender, a new galactic council convened in a purpose-built facility orbiting a neutral star system. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, many attending council proceedings for the first time after centuries of exclusion under Cthar dominance. Ambassador Vance, now elevated to Earth's senior diplomatic representative, addressed the assembly. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. For too long, power alone determined who would prosper and who would suffer. Earth experienced firsthand the injustice of this system, but we were fortunate. We had time to prepare, to develop means of defense that protected our people. She paused, her gaze moving across the diverse faces of the assembled delegates. Many species were not so fortunate. How many civilizations were crushed before they could reach their potential? How many contributions to art, science, and culture have we lost because power was valued above cooperation. Today, we begin to build something better. As she spoke, Admiral Marcus Thorne watched from the Earth delegation, the weight of recent events evident in the new lines on his face. The moral burden of unleashing shadow tech, even in defense, weighed heavily on him. The technology had been secured in the most protected facilities on Earth, to be used only in the most extreme circumstances, a deterrent, not a weapon of first resort. Across the chamber, former Supreme Overlord Forlag, now simply the representative of his homeworld, listened with an expression that mixed resentment with dawning respect. The Kthar and many other species still viewed humans with fear, perhaps even hatred. But increasingly, there was something else in their gaze: recognition. Humanity had revealed itself not just as powerful, but as possessing a restraint that many long-time galactic powers had never demonstrated. The shadow of humanity's terrifying response to aggression remained, a silent reminder that peace came with responsibility. The galaxy had changed irrevocably. Old hierarchies had crumbled, new alliances formed, and at the center of this transformation stood a species that most had dismissed as primitive barely a year before. As the first session of the new council concluded, Ambassador Vance joined Admiral Thorne on an observation deck overlooking the vast starfield. "Do you think it will last?" she asked quietly. "This peace." Marcus considered the question carefully before answering. "Nothing lasts forever, but we've given it a foundation stronger than fear or domination. That's something worth protecting, even if it means keeping shadow tech in reserve, always living with that temptation." "Especially then," he replied. "Great power requires greater restraint. That's the real lesson in all of this. Not that we defeated the Kthar, but that we chose not to destroy them when we could have." Below them, representatives of dozens of species mingled in the diplomatic reception area, old enemies cautiously engaging in conversation, former vassals standing as equals beside their one-time masters. It was an imperfect beginning, fraught with tension and lingering resentment, but it was a beginning nonetheless. And in distant, hidden facilities throughout human space, the most terrifying technologies remained secured and silent, a last resort that all hoped would never again be necessary in the new galactic order born from the ashes of conflict.